The following video features excerpts taken from 3 recorded live lessons on landscape drawing with charcoal. To learn more on how you can access this complete lesson series, as well as the other live lessons, video courses, ebooks, lesson plans, and more, visit thevirtualinstructor.com/members. So we've got Vine charcoal, that's a V-I-N-E charcoal, and of course it comes in a variety of different sizes as well, and hardnesses too. Just like graphite, some Vine charcoal is a little bit harder, meaning that it's going to make a little bit of a lighter mark, and some of it's a little bit softer, which is going to make a little bit of a darker mark. And then we have compressed charcoal, and this is what compressed charcoal looks like. Typically, compressed charcoal is going to be square, and Vine charcoal is typically going to be round, but there is a very noticeable difference in how they behave on the surface. We have a charcoal pencil, which actually has the compressed charcoal inside of it. Now, these marks are going to vary differently, or vary vastly, I should say. So first, with the Vine charcoal, let's make a few marks here with the Vine charcoal. Typically, I like to kind of use maybe a little bit of the side of the charcoal when I'm making marks with this. You can see it goes on really dark there initially, but if I take my finger and smudge it, you can see how much lighter it gets. You can see how much powdery or how powdery Vine charcoal is. Vine charcoal is great for laying in initial applications. It's also great for erasing out things as well. Of course, we can make marks with the eraser. This is a kneaded eraser. And of course, we'll be using a kneaded eraser for this as well. But you can see how easily the Vine charcoal lifts from the surface. Compressed charcoal is a different story. So this is compressed charcoal, and you can see how much darker this charcoal is. And if I was to take my finger and blend it, it does smudge to a certain degree, but not as easily as the Vine charcoal. If I use my kneaded eraser to try to erase, it lifts it up a little bit, but not much. So typically what you want to be thinking here is Vine charcoal is mostly going to be for initial applications, kind of when you're just filling out the drawing, when you're kind of getting some values on the surface and you want to make some changes throughout the process. Compressed charcoal is really for finishing touches. When you really want to push the value range and you really want to make some of those values nice and deep and dark, that's when you reach for the compressed charcoal. I want to get a little bit of charcoal on the surface, and I kind of want to pull out some of these leaves and things, and I want the light to be really strong breaking through. But when I first look at this, I kind of see some basic shapes that are happening here. And that's where I really want to put the charcoal initially. If you can see here, there's kind of a curve that comes down, and this kind of creates a shape right here with a little bit over here. And then we've got another shape right there. Of course, we want to figure out where the road's going to be, because this is essentially going to be our focal point. It's going to be the areas of highest contrast. We've got these lines that converge back there, and the trees are framing this section out as well. So we want to be careful where that is. So I'm going to kind of decide where it's going to be on here. And let's make it happen about right in here. Let's move it up just a touch. So the bottom of our road will be right here. We'll have those converging lines coming down. As I'm adding this, and even as I'm working down towards the bottom, I'm kind of thinking about the edges, ironically, since you brought that up, but I'm thinking about where different shapes are ending. Like up here at the end of the trees, I'm kind of comparing where it gets lighter up here and those lighter shapes that come down. And then I'll move over a little bit and try to match up with the reference where the next darker shape is. And then the next darker shape. We can pull some of the charcoal down to some of these areas back here in the distance where you have kind of those lighter grays. And we can erase out some of the lighter values that happen down there. Okay, so maybe some more shadows back here. And hopefully you can start to see some variation there. It might be very slight at this point. but that's how it's going to go. We're going to slowly build up things. And again, these values that I'm adding here might look pretty dark, but in the end, they won't appear really that dark once we put the vine charcoal or the compressed charcoal on there. And basically the way I'm looking at the reference is I'm just kind of bouncing around essentially. And when I see something, when I see a darker value or see a certain texture, I'm just trying to copy it right then. I'm not like following with my eyes a certain way, or I'm not trying to move in a certain pattern back here when I'm looking at this. I'm bouncing all over the place. Okay, so I'm just adding some areas that are a little bit darker and kind of leaving some lighter areas. Now, of course, we're not finished with this because we need to pull out some of the lights, and we'll do that in just a moment. I also like to start working in the area of the focal point if there's going to be a really defined focal point. But in this case, the focal point is down here where the road is. All right, let's see if we can pull out the tree trunk a little bit more, and I'm going to switch over to the charcoal pencil. And now this dark should be a little bit, there should be a little bit more contrast available here since we kind of lightened things up a little bit. We should be able to see the tree trunk a little bit clearer. And we can add a few more of those things that are happening back there in the distance, like maybe another tree trunk. So I'll see a place that needs to be a little bit darker, a little bit lighter, and just jump to it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Do the same thing over here. Just work our way down. And you know, these little edges and shapes that we're pulling out don't have to be exactly the same as what we're seeing in our photo reference. In fact, remember, you'll probably drive yourself crazy if you tried to make them the same. Let's give a little bit of information up here because I can't wait. Because these little, it really is amazing how these little branches, and I don't know if they're twigs. I think twigs are falling off of a tree, but these little branches just poking through here and there do wonders to create the illusion that it's a real tree. And the first thing I'm going to do here is, since I've kind of got a darker shape already in place just by applying the charcoal and smearing it around with my finger, now I can go back in and just start making some darker marks and kind of pulling it in the direction that I see the leaves are kind of growing in. And I'll zoom in a little bit closer here so you can kind of see how this illusion is created, because it really is an illusion. You can see that at this point. But let me pull this down just a little bit further too so you can see the upper part, so you can really appreciate how much of an illusion this is. Because with a little bit of distance there, from the natural distance that a viewer is going to view this, it really does look like there's a lot of detail going on up here, but it's really not. It's really just kind of softer, almost painterly marks made with the charcoal. But anyway, we see that there's kind of these diagonal, there's kind of a diagonal flow that's happening here with the leaves. So as I'm making the marks right here, I'm kind of making them at that diagonal and just kind of repeating marks, making smaller ones. And then as we get closer to the edge, maybe it becomes a little bit more irregular, just like that. And you always have to keep in mind that you are creating an illusion. And I say that over and over again when we're talking about drawings or paintings, but I think a lot of times we get caught up in the fact that, hey, we need to draw every single leaf, or I see this leaf, I got to draw it. I see that branch, I've got to draw it. And that's really not the way it is. We just need to kind of mimic the texture of what we're seeing, and then the illusion is created. As we're working down to the lower portion of the trees, it gets a little bit darker. So we're going to try to allow this area down here to be a little bit darker. It's going to get progressively lighter as it goes back, kind of like it is already, but we're going to kind of heighten that up a little bit. And then we're going to let it get a little bit lighter and then darker at the top. So we'll just add a little bit more of the vine charcoal down here. And at this point, we've got a good amount of the charcoal on the surface, so we can be a little bit more free with our marks and make it feel a little bit more painterly and rely on the relationships of the values to kind of create that illusion that we're after. So I'm just kind of putting down some marks and then kind of letting them fade in the background. And by doing this, we're creating a bit of variety in the value, and our viewer's just going to make sense of it all. So if we wanted to pull another stroke out here, and this one kind of has one anyway. So that's how we do it. You can see it against the white background a little bit easier, or the lighter value a little bit easier. But even the areas in the darker, even the marks in the darker areas count. They're important as well. All right, but whenever we've got an opportunity to extend one over an area of lighter value, we should take advantage of it. We'll also give a few indications of some of these smaller trees that are kind of popping up here. This is kind of, in reality, there is a break of the trees right here, and light does get in, and then the trees become more concentrated further down the path. Now, of course, I have edited this photograph with Photoshop too, and kind of enhanced the contrast and played around with some of the colors before I made it black and white. All right, let's work on the road here. And here again, I'm going to start by just kind of building up some of the values. The first thing we want to do is we want to build up a little bit more contrast down here at the bottom. I know I just muted the contrast over here, but I want to make the contrast stronger down here so that the lighter areas feel lighter. So I'm going to kind of think about the flow of the light that's coming over here, if that is the thing to think about, the flow of the light. And kind of work around some of these lighter areas. Now, if you don't have these lighter areas in place, just take your kneaded eraser and do a quick swipe or two. And I need to figure out a way to get this to kind of change directions with the flow here. So I'm trying to make this curve a little bit, just with the way that I'm handling the blending stump here and pulling the strokes out. And you know, and in reality, the road kind of, I keep saying in reality like we're not living in reality or something, but the road actually curves a little bit down here anyway. So I think by kind of pulling the strokes and allowing them to turn with the light, not only am I going to create a little bit more of the flow that I want here in the composition, but it's also going to enhance the light down here and kind of flow with the way the road goes anyway. So, okay, so just some subtleties in the highlight here. And we want to have some variety. There's another little subtle, there's another highlight that happens right here, but let's make it a little bit more subtle. So I'm not going to put as much pressure on the eraser. Now add a little bit down here. Now this is one of those pieces where you literally could keep working on this for eternity. I mean, we could keep going back and forth adjusting the contrast and stuff over here. Like I said, I feel like this whole area needs to be darker. This tree needs to not be quite so strong in there. And you can see just adding those few marks there along the edges has enhanced it. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, we could work on this one forever. This is one where you could kind of get lost going back and forth, because the charcoal, you can move around and manipulate and forever. But you also have to get to a point where you say, okay, enough's enough. This is finished.
If you enjoyed this video, then subscribe to the channel. And if you want to learn even more about drawing and painting,
then check out our comprehensive membership program, which includes video courses, weekly live lessons, ebooks, lesson plans for teachers, and much, much more. To learn more about our program, just click on the link here or click on the card in the upper right-hand corner. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, thank you for allowing me to be part of your artistic journey.